Hey, it's Eric G. Around the House is sponsored by Baldwin Hardware. For 75 years, Baldwin Hardware has been known for its first-class quality and craftsmanship in door and cabinetry hardware. As an alumnus of the Baldwin Hardware Design Council, I can say I have seen the details and quality from design to the finished product. If you're looking for a new style and old-world craftsmanship, I can tell you there is only one Baldwin Hardware. Check out what would look great in your home at baldwinhardware.com.
It's Around the House.
When people start talking about natural products, like, have you been on any like these crunchy mom groups or anything like that?
I try to stay away from those.
I mean, they're interesting. Well, I mean, like, I kind of like to see, like, you know, what they're claiming works. Mm-hmm. You know, because so much of this stuff is like, hey, we'll use this essential oil or use this. Like, here's the issue: is any oil will kill any bug every time. Yeah, and it's just because, like, if you spray a bug with oil, like we breathe through our nose, they breathe through their whole body. Yeah. So, like, if you get any kind of oil on them, it's basically going to suffocate them. And so, like, you know, you're getting that dopamine hit of effectiveness. Like, I put oil on the bug, and
when it comes to remodeling and renovating your home, there is a lot to know, but we've got you covered. This is Around the House.
Welcome to the Around the House show, where we help you get the most out of your home through information and education. Thanks for joining us today. Well, you know something, I've talked about pest control in the past, but it's been something that's been hyper-local to where I'm located here in Portland. And I brought on a buddy, Chief Executive Officer and founder at Termisave and owner at Excalibur Pest Control, Craig Williams, also from the Homeowners Show. Welcome to Around the House again, buddy.
Man, thank you so much for having me. It's been a dream of mine to come on the show, so I'm excited to. Deep. Yeah. So. Yeah, we've had you on a couple of times, man. So it's exciting to get to be on your show, man.
Yeah, we've been overdue to do this, and I was like, all right, we're going to start out 2023, so we're going to make that happen, because should have happened a while. But you know, it's one of the things that pest control is a big deal, and across the country, there are all these different things that people fight. You know, on the West Coast where I'm at in the Northwest, one of our biggest thing here is carpenter ants. That's kind of our biggest, you know, as far as a insect pest. And then we've got, you know, the rats, mice, and get down towards the water, you get those wharf rats that look like possums. But that's pretty much the main part of that. And
they've been crossbred with poodles at some point in time. So,
dude, those things waddle, man, when they get big.
Yeah,
those things are huge. But you know, that's the thing, is termites are such a big thing across the country in most areas. And it's one of the least in our areas, you know, one of the least threatening things compared to all the others. But that's not the case in most of the U.S.
No. I mean, you know, the big number that everyone always throws out with termites is, like, annually they do about $5 billion worth of damage to people's homes and property. And, you know, it can happen. It can really happen at any time. You know, it's December down here in Texas. And so, which usually means that there's not going to be as much termite activity. But I just came from one yesterday where they had eaten the entire wall of a room. You know, and they were new homeowners. It was their second year in their home, and the guy had been using it as his office. And he was like, there was this weird corner. It looked like there had been like some old water damage that they'd painted over. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, probably was what happened, is they thought it was water damage and just painted it over it to sell the house. Well, come to find out, that's where the termites were coming in, and there was a leak in the ceiling. And so they just followed the water up the wall and then started working their way across the cross beams at the top. And so, like, you know, it sucks for them because those guys have been in there eating for 2 years. The good news for them is that it was subterranean. So they're a little bit slower working than some other kinds of termites.
That's good. Yeah, I had some old carpenter ant damage in my house, and I'd opened up doing my kitchen remodel, opened up some drywall, and I'm like, oh, there's a lot of sawdust up here. That's not good.
Is that the pictures you sent me?
Yeah. That was from like last year. Yeah. I was like, wow, that's cool.
I mean, the weird thing about that, man, is I was doing a little bit of research because, like, I know that you're, you know, kind of up in the Pacific Northwest, and we're talking to people across the U.S. The number one pest in the United States, do you know what it is?
No.
It's carpenter ants.
Ah, okay.
It's because everybody has them. Like, there's not a state that doesn't have them.
You can't dodge them.
like 66% of ant calls for pest control companies are going to be for carpenter ants. Either they think they're carpenter ants or they have carpenter ants, or somebody else has failed to deal with carpenter ants. So they're calling in another, big hitter to see if they can get rid of them.
Yeah. Now, if you want to identify those carpenter ants, those are not the little tiny sugar ants you see running around. These are their big fat daddies that are running around. That
do you guys have the big black ones?
We have the big black ones.
So there around here, there's two kinds. And I think this is true most of the southern United States. Is there's the big black carpenter ants, which is just the standard carpenter ant.
Yep.
And then there's the Florida carpenter ant. And most people, when they see those, they think that they're fire ants. They look very similar, but I mean, like, and
they're wearing like white leisure suits and hats. And oh, sorry, Florida.
Yeah, no, they're very flirtatious.
Yes.
No, but they're kind of red and black.
Okay.
And I mean, they can do just as much damage. Their colonies tend to be a little bit smaller than those big black ones. Mm-hmm. I love finding those big black ones, man. When you find the honey hole on those and you flush them out, it scares the bejesus out of people.
Oh yeah. Well, and what's crazy with those is that you can have, like I live close and kind of in the woods. You can have a tree out there that's not even on your property. This is where they're coming from. And they've set up those secondary kind of nests inside your house. Yeah. And you can get it out of the house, but they're still trying to get back in.
Yeah. They will set up satellite colonies. And really what's happening there is most of the time people want you to come in. They're like, what can you spray to get rid of them? And like that, you're asking me the wrong question.
Yeah.
What we need to figure out is why they're there.
Yep.
Because if you can solve the environmental issue, then you can get rid of the ant. Because ants are dumb. I mean, like if you spray chemicals down, they will make a highway of dead ants to get to what it is that they want to get to, especially carpenter ants. And like 9 times out of 10, it's water. I feel like I'm being
but that's okay.
I feel like I'm even being disingenuous with that number. It's like almost 100% of the time there's like a leak or a moisture issue or something going on. It's like, if we can solve that, you don't really need the chemical. Most of the time.
It's that moisture.
Yeah. So
I've also noticed too, I had this in my house here. It looked like it was more wet wood when they had first, done work on the house. And it was like a fresh new thing because there was no water source that I could find around it, but it looked like it was an area that maybe it was damp wood when they're first framing it or something. That was that's one time that I'm like, I don't know how water got anywhere near it because there's not a roof over it that's close. There's not a, you know what I mean? It had to have been something that was, maybe a pre-infected wood or something at some point.
It could have been something that wasn't kilned very well. I mean, there's all sorts. I mean, like it could have been left out in the yard when they were building the house and it just got soaked and they put it up anyway.
Yeah. Well, anything here, everything here in the Pacific Northwest, we get rain this time of year. I mean, it's really bad. I can go by projects now, like, the 6-story mixed use timber framed, just wood framed buildings. The bottom floor is usually black just from the mildew on the water, on everything. Cause they've been framing for 6 weeks in the rain, and it's just everything's soaked. And then they drywall it and, everything just goes over the top. They, house wrap it, get it going. I mean, there's not much drying, and then you got an environmental hazard there, and that's prime category for. I would imagine
impatience is the enemy there. I mean, like people are just wanting to get their houses, and so like they don't care if they get dried out; they just want to move in.
Yeah,
is that what's going on?
Yeah, it is. And especially on those commercial projects, they're just trying to get done. They just want to keep rocking. Keep moving. We got a schedule to hit, and now there's products out there. Not to get out too off on the side note, but products like Zip and some of these other ones you can get out there, and you just don't have to worry about it when the sheeting has got its own barrier on the outside. It just keeps it, keeps the house drier, which means it's better off on the inside. You don't have as much of that moisture intrusion.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think we're going to continue to see more and more products that, do seal. I mean, like there's a huge market. There's like, I forget the name. I think it was called Dauber Stopper, this new product that I saw. Mm-hmm. And it's just a cover for your drain lines on your home to keep mud daubers from getting inside. Which I mean, like it's cool, but like I mean, like they're mud daubers. I mean, like really, that's your thing. I mean, what they're trying to prevent is that line backflowing. Because they'll get up in there and put mud.
Just plug up that vent, right?
Yeah, yeah. But at some point, like it's. You just got to realize the house has to breathe. Like there's going to be entry points. And And so like, do I want to spend $100 on a product that covers a pipe when I can just stick a stick up in it from time to time and knock the mud loose?
Yeah. And basic maintenance, and that's what they're trying to do is, okay, we're going to make it so this can be as maintenance free as possible, all while selling $100 pieces, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, everybody wants their pound of flesh, I suppose. So.
Absolutely. So what are I'm not experienced with termites because I'll be honest, I have not seen in the Pacific Northwest here in my 30 years. Mm-hmm. I think I've seen one tented residence in 30 years in thousands of projects. It just doesn't happen here.
Well, and so there's probably a good reason for that. Tenting, one, it's really expensive and it's really dangerous. The reason you tent is because you don't want that stuff to escape and get out because they're using the kinds of chemicals that by the time you smell them, it's too late. You're gone. And there's really only a couple of termites that works with. So it's damp wood and dry wood termites.
Okay.
And those are really the only two regular termites here in the U.S. that we see those kind of applications with. The other two are the subterranean and then Formosan termites. And those are both in the ground.
Okay.
And I think one of the reasons that we're starting to see a little bit of a resurgence in some of the termite talk and not that it ever went away, but you still have guys today talking about chloridane. Which was a product that was banned like almost 2 decades ago.
I was going to say 20 something years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. But you still have guys talking about it today. Like, man, I wish we still had that. And the reason is because that product would last about 20 years.
Yeah.
And so if it was banned about 20 years ago, which means that it probably stopped being used on a regular basis about 15 years ago. Yep. If we're being honest, which means that we're kind of coming up on the tail end of the efficacy of that product. Mm-hmm. For a lot of properties. And so you're going to start seeing some properties that haven't had issues in years start to have them.
Yeah.
Because they've been able to ward it off with that residual.
Yeah. 20 years ago, they went nuclear on it and made a wasteland. And all of a sudden it's like, well, those days are over. It's party time at the house.
They're fixing to do the same thing with rodenticides. We're getting news down the pipeline that we're about to lose a lot of our really good products with rodenticides.
Oh man.
And to a certain degree, it's like, well, we shouldn't have made them available to the public.
It's funny, and sorry, public and all of our listeners out there. And that's where things tend to go sideways is that you get people out there, most of the professionals know that are licensed. They go out and do their thing if, depending on where you're located, and people know what things are good for and what they're not. But when you can go down to the home center and use it, all of a sudden people treat it like it's latex paint and they can go anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And they don't care if they poison the neighbor's cat.
The lake house that they're on or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And they leave it there unattended in an unweighted box or not even in a box. I've seen people just put like massive bait blocks and just throw them out in the yard. And
that's not healthy.
No. So anyway, that aside, we have good products now. The best liquid one out there is probably Termidor, but they will only warranty it for 10 years.
That's still a long time though.
It is a long time, but it's a numbers game, right?
Yeah.
So for my customers down here, and I'm in the Houston area, and it's pretty much the same in Houston, San Antonio, Austin, DFW, all termites are pretty much the same. What I tell everybody is on average, like you have, a 7 to 10,000 square foot lot, right?
Yep.
You've probably got 20 colonies of termites living in that yard.
Oh, wow.
On average, right? So the numbers are actually on your side, right? Unless you have like a really heavy conducive condition, like a leak or something like that, the likelihood that you're going to get them is pretty low.
Yeah.
It's a 1 in 20 chance, and that rarely happens over the course of home ownership. And most, I forget how long the average home, I think the number has gone down for how long people are owning houses, but most people rarely have to deal with it.
All right. So is there if you can, most likely scenario, is it somebody that has a let's get into house construction. If they have a basement versus a crawl space versus like slab on grade, is there one that's maybe more conducive to termites than the other? Or is it pretty much just a roll the dice, it's your turn?
It is a roll the dice, it's your turn situation.
Okay.
Now I will say, the likelihood of you getting damage from termites based off of the structure type is different. Mm-hmm. Because if you're living in a block and beam or a pier and beam, the likelihood that you're going to go around and inspect 360 degrees on each one of those piers, very low.
Not happen.
I'm not doing it.
No.
I mean, you can't pay me enough to crawl underneath those houses, and I won't do it. So, I mean, like, if you get them and they're on one of those, the likelihood that they have time to establish and actually do some damage is pretty high.
Sure.
So that,
because once they get going, there's nobody there to stop them.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's really not much you can do. I mean, like those kind of jobs, are very time consuming. And I mean, like if we're being honest, I mean, most of the time, it's not all the time, but people who live in pier and beam houses don't tend to be in the higher income bracket. And so even though they're in that kind of a home, they tend to garner a more expensive treatment when it comes to something like that. And so a lot of people will just end up walking away from it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it'll cost twice as much to do that than it will a traditional slab. Got
it. Yeah. We've got a lot of 60s and 70 homes here that were built in that pier and beam kind of system here on crawl spaces. We've got a lot of those. And I think it was just because they were trying to build so many homes fast.
Okay.
And that lumber was so prevalent that you could go and do what they would do is they do that pier and beam. So they'd have like 4 foot in between the beams. Then they'd put 2x6 car decking down, at a diagonal and then another subfloor on top of it. And
yeah, it's a great way to build a house. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
I mean, like it's
not conducive for inspections. That's for darn sure.
No, nobody wants to go underneath there. I mean, not even plumbers. I mean, like, and that's kind of what they do. I mean, like, and like, I think that's one of the upsides to like a pier and beam is like, it makes plumbing jobs a lot easier.
Oh man, it's beautiful. HVAC, all of it is so much easier to do.
Yeah. So, but I've seen them be bad in basements. I've seen weird basements too, man. I mean, like we don't really have basements here.
I was going to say basements aren't that big a deal, down in the Houston area, is it?
No, and like the few people that I've found that have them have had them built after the fact, and they're mostly wine cellars.
Gotcha. We're here, it's probably 40%, 30%, 40%. So we're not too bad here on the West Coast where we're at.
Yeah, people that have been moving here that have been buying houses, they're like, "Where's the basement?" We're like, "We don't do that here." Yeah. They're like, "Well, where do you keep your stuff?" It's like, well, we don't park houses. Everyone here, it's like no one parks their cars in the garage, which is weird because the sun just beats the living tar out of them.
Yeah.
But that's how everyone just throws stuff in the garage.
Interesting. Yeah, that's wild. We've got another pest here that we have. We have these boring beetles that'll come through and create a light sawdust too as well that we'll get into the wood here that tends to go into the older dry wood. We'll see it. Not really wet wood, but it just goes after that. I see it a lot in that pier and post types foundation stuff. I've seen a lot of those in that older stuff, not so much, Yeah.
And that is where you'll see those. And there's different kinds. There's like cigarette beetle and powder post beetles. And I mean, like, dude,
like powder post is the most one we see here. Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine. So most people are the victims of nostalgia when it comes to those guys, because they will, I've seen them where people brought like old driftwood into the house that had been set out in the sun and dried for a long time. And then they bring it inside in the air condition, and all of a sudden the beetles start feeling good and they start hatching out, and all of a sudden they've got a real problem, and they're getting into, grandma's, I don't even like old,
getting into the old wood chest or furniture,
your heritage pieces and things like that. So, and like when people start doing these barnwood walls,
oh my gosh, that's a guilty one on a lot of different reasons, but yes, totally.
Yeah. And so like you can bring an infestation in that way. I mean, most people don't even realize that, the reason that you end up paying a lot for that stuff at the store, like if you go to like one of the big box stores, is because it's probably been treated.
Yeah.
So that doesn't happen. But if you're, rolling out into Kentucky and finding some old barn and just taking it apart and then bringing it in and building a wall in your house, good luck.
Yeah. See, we got lucky. We used to have a company here. I think they closed down during COVID, but there was right in the middle of Portland, there was a kiln dried place. So they would take all of their wood. First thing they'd do is they'd grate it, make sure it was usable. They'd send it down and get a kiln dried, which would kill everything inside of that because you're just baking the snot out of that thing.
Heat is one of the best treatments for just about any kind of bug. But you have to get it really hot.
Yeah.
If you ever go to a hotel, you'll see guys rolling through rooms with heat machines. Now they're not using pesticides as much, especially for the, like when the bed bugs were so big for a while.
Yeah.
They've really gotten a
handle.
I'm sure
they're still bed. They're just not reporting on them.
Well, no, I mean, most big hotels have a maintenance program now. And,
okay.
And so what they'll do is they'll kind of shut down a room for a day. They'll go in and heat treat it.
Gotcha.
And it's so much easier to do in a hotel because there's not a whole lot in there that can melt. Because because you go into someone's home, they're typically going to have like candles or something made out of plastic or whatever.
Exactly.
You heat it up to like 180 degrees in there, it's going to melt anything.
Yeah.
It's got a low melt.
You got pictures and everything going crazy.
Right. Hotel, not much to move out.
Pull the electronics out of it and go, right?
Yeah, and you're good to go. You could probably knock out, 6 to 10 rooms in a day if you're really moving. So I mean, like they've just made it part of their good hotels have made it part of their maintenance. I'll put it that way.
Nice. Yeah, that was a huge problem there for a while. It seemed. I don't know if people had just gotten off from doing it, but it was all over the news. People were having serious bed bug infestations, and it seemed like people that were traveling would get it and then take it to the next hotel room with them.
Well, yeah, and it was a problem because like we knew what the best treatment was, which was heat.
Yeah.
But the equipment had just gotten out of hand. Like it was, I think at the time it was somewhere between $10,000 and $12,000 just for like a single piece of equipment. And so, but with any issue that begins to get reported, it becomes more and more viable for companies to invest in that kind of stuff because they know that the work's going to be there. Whereas, like, why would I buy this huge piece of equipment when I don't have any calls coming in for this kind of stuff?
True.
So
get some competition. All of a sudden that $10,000 machine is $2,500 3 years later. Now everybody's out there doing it, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And that's true. Like as people do more and more work, they sell more and more equipment. So the equipment gets cheaper, And
there's always somebody around the corner that's going to come in and make it cheaper.
That's right. Capitalism can be beautiful.
It can be when you're trying to get into that specialty stuff. That's for sure. That's for sure. Well, yeah, that makes sense. And that's one of those things too. And I wanted to talk too, and we'll go back to termites here in a second, but
sure,
man, out here in the West Coast where I'm located, we have such a homeless issue, an outdoor camping issue in our cities that our rodents have gotten so out of control.
Yeah.
Well, because there's just trash everywhere.
Well, I mean, gird your loins, man. I'm not kidding because they are taking away some of the best products that you guys have to deal with this kind of stuff. Like on a broad spectrum, because at the end of the day, like if it's your home, Victor's is a great option.
Yeah.
Most people just don't have the stomach for it because it can be a little gruesome sometimes.
Yeah.
But as far as like treating big pieces of property and in areas like that, like if you, and it always and this is just kind of the rule in our industry. It always starts on the West Coast and then just moves its way across the US. It's like West Coast and then Northeast, and then it just kind of converges on Texas. And so they've already banned a lot of them in California. And so like we just sort of watch the regulations in Cal and then expect them to come here in about 10 to 15 years.
Gotcha.
Which
and that's unfortunate.
One of the things I did want to people that listen to your show, I wanted to impress upon them the importance of using a local pest control company. Not because that's what I do, but what goes on in my state is completely different than the regulations in your state, in all 50 states, because I can't do business in any other state except for Texas unless I'm licensed in that state. Each state has their own rules and regulations when it comes to this kind of stuff. And so the reason it's important to use a local pest control company is because when you start using some of these big guys, and I won't name any of them, but you all know who they are.
We all know them.
Yeah, they have their own rules and regulations that are very broad and they're not specific to your area. Now, their guys have to be licensed in your area, but they're operating off a whole different set of rules and regulations that they have to follow, which in some instances really hamstrings them from what they're able to do.
Hey, man, I used to have a big sponsor of my radio show in Portland here that was that. And a lot of these big name companies that are the chains, that are the franchises around there, they walk in and they got, okay, well, I got 4 boxes to check to do. We can do plan A, plan B, plan C, or plan D, even though those aren't really great for my area. Right. That's what they're going to try to pitch you. Every time. Your local people are like, hey, I know it works for this. We got to go this direction. Yeah. And like you said, those national ones, you're kind of stuck because you're at the McDonald's of pest control, and
they want you
you're
on
not
the
getting
plan,
the custom burger.
and they want you on the contract.
Yep.
Other than that, they legit don't care. That's not to say that the guy on the ground doesn't care. The guy standing behind him doesn't care. He just wants him to get the account, to get the contract. And
I've heard too, like with carpenter ants, that they're starting to use a lot less pesticides with that kind of stuff, where they've got things that kind of more naturally fight them than they did maybe 10 or 20 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about like natural products. I mean, when people start talking about natural products, like, have you been on any like these crunchy mom groups or anything like that?
No, I try to stay away from those.
I mean, they're interesting. Well, I mean, like, I kind of like to see like, what they're claiming works. Because so much of this stuff is like, hey, we'll use this essential oil or use this. Like, here's the issue is any oil will kill any bug every time. Yeah. And it's just because, like, if you spray a bug with oil, like we breathe through our nose, they breathe through their whole body. Yeah. So like, if you get any kind of oil on them, it's basically going to suffocate them. And so like, you're getting that dopamine hit of effectiveness. Like, I put oil on the bug and it died. So now you think that lemongrass is the solution to everything. And it's like, well, yeah, it killed that bug. But like, if you just, spritz it around your kitchen, it's not going to do anything other than smell like lemongrass.
Yeah. And probably put a bunch of VOCs in your air and make an unhealthy home, by the way.
Yeah.
Thanks, Caroline. I learned a lot of that stuff from her. So,
but yeah, so there are, and then even then, like we have I'll give you a for instance. We install a lot of mosquito misting systems. Okay. And the main product from that is derived from an African marigold.
Oh, wow.
Right. But if you get it on you, it will burn you.
Oh,
I mean, like, it will light you up, and it's especially in concentrated form. We typically dilute it in like 50 gallons of water.
Sure.
So, and even then, once you dilute it, it'll irritate you a lot.
It's supposed to kill something, so that makes sense.
But it's a natural product, right? And so, like, there's a big confusion when people start saying, "Well, what about more natural products?" Well, like, that can mean just about anything. Yeah. Now, and the reason they're able to say that is because we have so many synthetics now.
True.
That we're using.
Sewage,
so they're able to point
sewage
back
is
and go,
natural. Doesn't mean you need to use it. I mean, let's be honest.
No one needs to bathe in it.
Yeah.
So yes, that's true. But at the end of the day, you like that specific product that I just mentioned that's derived from the marigold, and there's lots of different brands in that. So I won't, say what it is, because there's, anyway, you can use that to flush carpenter ants out. It's used as a flushing agent sometimes.
Got it.
So, but at the end of the day, environmental issues is what saves the day. Because if you can eliminate the source of what's causing them to be there, then all you have to do is follow them back to the nest. Now, when you get to the nest, follow the label. But there's plenty of pesticides, and the big one on the market right now, and like you can kill ants all day long with bifenthrin.
Yeah.
And everybody's making bifenthrin right now.
Yeah.
So
for now.
For now. I like, honestly, man,
Yeah.
that's been such a good product to us. I mean, I'd throw a fit. I absolutely would.
Yeah.
But I mean, like they've made it increasingly available to the public. And it's used irresponsibly. Eventually, because they've made it available to the public, eventually we're going to start seeing it in our waterways. And as soon as that happens, it'll go away.
It's done. Yeah, I had a way that I was fighting mosquitoes in my house. Not this one I'm currently at. This was a couple of houses ago, and it's a mile from here, so it wasn't that far. But I had this canal that was behind my house that fed the lake, but it was stagnant most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was probably a 24-foot wide canal that was, but it was green, and when they'd go fill the lake up or need to add water to the lake, of course, water would move through it. But other than that, it was the fill for the lake. It didn't really do much. Mm-hmm. And so the only way I could do it without really nuking stuff was I was throwing out those enzyme little donuts thing over the fence into it.
Yeah.
They're like the little rice cakes.
Those are super effective. Those are actually a microorganism that eats the mosquito larvae.
Yeah.
And like, those are great. You can put those in stock tanks, and it's safe for horses and goats and cows to drink. I mean, you can drink it. It tastes weird.
Yeah.
But that is an all natural product. I mean, there's a microorganism in the water, just like there is in, any standing body of water.
Sure.
You're just adding one that's beneficial.
Yeah, I would just get out there probably once a month because they'd kind of float up and down the thing. It moved a little bit, and I just huck them over the fence each month. I'd go to the home improvement store, grab them, huck them over the fence, and it was still 30 feet down to it. And man, that cut my mosquitoes down by probably 80%.
I don't doubt it. I mean, because you're getting them at the source.
Yeah,
I mean, they don't like to travel very far, so that's where they're breeding. That's where they're laying their eggs. It just makes sense, and it's cheap.
Yeah. It was a simple solution. The other thing, if I was going to be there longer, I probably would have gone into, I've seen some of those big mosquito machines you can put in the backyard. Do those even work?
Well, it depends on which ones you're talking about. Like they have like the ones that they have at the big box stores that are like the light that has the fan that, kind of draws them in. And they're not ineffective. I mean, they catch mosquitoes, but I mean, like if you want to be able to go out in your backyard and enjoy it when it's really bad, then no.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's basically two forms of treatment. You can fog the yard with like a hand fogger. We have like, big backpack units that we use.
Sure.
And it can be really effective because you combine a pesticide with what they call an IGR. And the IGR affects the reproductive cycle. And then you also add a surfactant so it sticks to the underbrush and things like that. Or you can spend a bunch of money and put in a misting system. Misting, and they're expensive because there's a lot of parts involved, a lot of labor involved, but they're also really effective. And every single one of them is custom. So it's going to be designed to how your property works and where you want to be. And most of the time they're on remote control. And they're super reliable. And what's great about them is that they can be there when my guys can't.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so they can get it. That just goes and it does it. And it's just like anything else that's automated.
Yeah. Well, and like with a remote, I mean, you can be like, hey, we're going to have dinner outside in an hour. I'm going to run it for 30 seconds right now and just, clear the area. So it's actually using less pesticide to get a desired result.
So I'm going to share my screen here. And this is what I grew up with as a kid in Eastern Washington. And, how I'm still alive from this is amazing, but you can look at the screen here. This is how they used to do mosquito control when I was a kid. They'd honk the horn and you'd probably have to go inside for a minute. And they had an old Army Jeep that was just fogging the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. So we had a fleet of those.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah. We sold it about 12 or 15 years ago now. And we had four trucks, and we would do anywhere from 2 to 6 neighborhoods per truck every night through the season here in Houston. Here's the deal with that stuff, man. Like, I am unconvinced that it's effective, and like they're still doing it.
Yeah. I love the byline on this. Kids today just don't know the joy of running behind one of these in the fog.
Well, like even my folks talk about riding behind their bicycles on those because they would run them during the daytime.
Right.
And when we were doing it, and this is actually how I started in our company. I started working for my dad when I was 15, working on little engines to operate those things. And
wow.
Like we would only do it at night. Like, and you couldn't,
just because they're out, and two, less people
safer.
in the way, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, but like, if they're doing it like they're supposed to, what's coming out of the back of that truck is mostly diesel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's what it looks like. It looks like a diesel fog now that I think about it.
That's exactly what it is. It's not heated. It's pressurized.
Yeah.
And then put through a fogger essentially.
Yeah.
And like, man, it's a cool, I mean, like you're using like medical grade pumps. It's an intricate system. And it takes a lot of maintenance to maintain those things. But dude, it is, I just can't get my brain wrapped around like, it's like, we're all going to agree for me to pump out gallons of diesel throughout a neighborhood, that's been connected to a pesticide, which back in the day, I don't know if they're using the same one, but the one we were using back in the day, it was called Scourge.
Yep.
And we had to put on like a respirator and full rubber gloves with the thing in order to even get it out of the barrel. So, I mean, like it's stout stuff. And then to like combine that with diesel and then just like, we're just going to pump it out willy nilly into the neighborhood. I'm happy to not be in that business anymore. I mean, like there's no controlling drift.
Well, and here's the thing. Let's do some simple math here, right? Mm-hmm. You're driving down the road and doing this. Think of the cubic volume of air in the neighborhood.
Right.
And you're driving down these little streets that are 24 feet wide and making a little fog there, but you're missing 95% of the area.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not really working that much by volume if you think about it.
No. And this will blow your mind, man. And this is a conversation I had several years ago, but it was a professor down at Mississippi State, and he was in charge of environmental responses through the government with natural disasters. And I think this particular instance that he was talking to me about was after Katrina.
Okay.
And I don't know if you know, but like hurricanes will displace mosquitoes like crazy. So
I bet, because one, it pushes everything up, the other way. And then two, it dumps water and fills up everything that can take water. So now you've got this feeding ground. I can only imagine what that does.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And in Texas, we'll get those marsh mosquitoes from Louisiana, and they'll be with us for like 6 months after that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, what he was telling me, because he was showing me pictures, he was flying around in a helicopter because there was parts of Mississippi and Alabama, Louisiana, all that area without power. And so people were living without air conditioning. Their windows were open and they were just getting decimated by mosquitoes. And so they were worried about malaria, Zika, and all these transferable diseases that you get from mosquitoes. And he was telling me, he's like, look, we went through and treated. And what most people don't know is that they know how to eradicate mosquitoes. Like they have done the math and they know that we could eliminate them permanently.
Yeah.
They're just it's like the $1 million man, right? We have the technology. We can do it, but they don't know the consequences. And so they're unwilling to pull the trigger. And I say, good for them. I mean, let's never let anybody else know what that is.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to know the downstream of what it is that, their mosquitoes are keeping in check.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting, when you're getting into that kind of, bioscience of engineering, and I'm not this guy, so I'm by no means an expert, and you can keep the hate mail away from me on this one. But, you think about it, when you start messing around with stuff, and I my friend Caroline, former co-host here, the other day, she posted a thing up about honeybees. And I went, and you realize that honeybees in the U.S. are not native to the U.S., that they were brought here from Europe in the 1700s.
Yep.
Before that, we didn't have honeybees here.
Didn't. And like everything grew just fine.
Yeah.
So, and
I'm not
also
saying honeybees, by the way. I'm just saying that they're not some been here for 1,000 gun of years thing either.
Yeah, no. Well, and like I mean, honeybees are triggering to me. I keep bees. I
love bees.
I love them too. But like when people start telling me like, oh, they're in danger and they're in decline. And I'm like, no, have you actually like looked at the numbers? Like they're doing great. Yeah. Like they've adapted. And like
that's how they got here.
Well, yeah, they're highly adaptable. And not only that, I mean, like where you would think that they would have the hardest time, they are thriving. Like if you go to a metropolis city, like Chicago, right? Chicago should be death to bees. One, it's crazy windy, it's cold, and there's not a lot of habitat. And they thrive.
I saw that in the movie, the Bee Movie too, but yeah.
That's where we go to get truth. Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah. But yeah, that is what you would think would be the most inhabitable place for a bee to live, and they do great.
They do great. And not just them. I mean, there's like bumblebees and you know, there's all kinds of different bees that we have around, but like honeybees are doing just fine.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not to say that we shouldn't be responsible with pesticides. And there's like here's the other thing that really bugs me about this honeybee stuff, man, is they call it colony collapse disorder. Do you know why they call it that?
Why?
Because they don't know what's causing it.
Oh, nice.
It's literally a made up disease because they don't know what was causing colonies to literally collapse.
Wow.
And so all they're doing is speculating. So they would say like, well, we think that it's probably happening because neonicotinoid, pesticides. Well, they don't know that. There's no link to it. And so like it's just pure speculation. Look, you could claim that a colony collapsed and all it did was swarm and you didn't notice.
Yeah, it took off and swarmed, and all of a sudden you're like, "Hey, what happened here?" Oh, they moved down the street.
Yeah, and you'll hear stories all the time of vandals that just go through and knock over people's beehives just because they think it's fun.
Jerks.
And it's like, so the reporting on this stuff is just weird.
Yeah.
And it's
then I got the murder hornets up here, man. I'm murder hornet territory.
Yeah. I think you guys had like the only live capture of an actual murder hornet.
Yeah, so, it was just north of me here by 5 or 6 hours. But yeah,
you shocked the nation, man.
Yeah, and the cool thing is I think they've got it. Watching them go in, and we'll keep this on subject here, but watching them go in and try to capture that hive and keep them in there was interesting.
Oh yeah,
they came in with CO2, and there's some video on it. I'll find it and send it over to you. They came in with CO2. And then wrapped it up and literally cut the section of the tree out, took it in a refrigerated thing. And I mean, they wanted to make sure that they got they didn't want one single one getting out of there.
Did they? I guess they did it at night, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think they did. I'll find the video on it. It was fascinating to watch. And they've been doing traps for a couple of years now. So I think they did not find them in 2022 anywhere. Yeah. So they're thinking that, and there's thousands of traps around the area. So
have you ever seen a picture of a cicada killer?
No.
So dude, you should pull that up.
Okay.
And then enjoy what has been the last 2 years of my life.
Cicada killer. Okay. I got to pull this up now. As I pull it up here.
So after that story ran about murder hornets.
Yeah.
Like, at least twice a week. I think I've got the murder hornet.
Wow. Dude, those things will carry you off.
They are completely benign.
Really?
Yeah. Like they don't, I mean like any wasp, man, like it's just like
I'm not a fan of wasps, by the way. We could eradicate those personally, and I'd be totally cool with that.
Well, okay. Like, and I'll say something about that here in a second. Yeah. I mean, because they look, I see it on your screen now. They look like if you saw a picture of the murder hornet and you saw that in your yard, and it's like 2 inches long. It's
I got a baby murder hornet. Yeah.
Yeah. And so people are like, I think I got them. So, but like they dig holes in the ground. And they're not aggressive at all. I mean, like you could swat them. Cool. They would care less. But they're just big and scary looking. And so people freak out and they're like, no, they've been here for thousands of years now.
All right. But the news grabbed it.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
So, but like, wanting to eradicate wasps. So this is something I talk to people all the time when you start talking about like natural pest control, like a dirt dauber.
Yeah.
They're unsightly. They, make, I don't know if you guys have them, but like they make,
Eastern side of our state has them. Yeah. We don't get too much here. We're just too wet.
Yeah. That makes sense. But like they make ugly mud balls on the side of your house. Well, if you ever break one of those open, what you'll find inside is a lot of spider carcasses because that's what they eat. And so it's like, which one do you want around? You want a non-stinging mud dauber or giant spiders?
All right.
You can pick.
I'll take the mud dauber. Yep.
Me too.
I get it. Yep. So, I'll talk about spiders. I learned about crazy spiders. I was down in El Salvador out in the jungle. We were working down there. This cabinet company I worked with, we sponsored a village down there. So for 2 years, I went down there and spent a couple weeks in the El Salvadoran jungle. Oh. And we'd be walking around right down these things, these roads kind of. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, holy smokes, this red tarantula would pop up out of the ground and these guys would go over and kill it. And I'd go, "What's that?" And they'd go, "Those are going to kill you. So be careful." And it was like, holy smokes. I'm not a fan of the red tarantulas.
Well, like they like the trapdoor spiders.
Yeah. They pop out of like a pencil size hole.
Oh, okay. So
they just pop out.
Were they not very big?
The size of my hand.
Okay. Yeah. That's big enough.
Big enough. I'd always let those guys walk ahead of us because they'd usually see something and they'd kind of jump up and run away and they'd pop out of the dusty ground and they're over there just, and I'm like, whacking wow, okay. Yeah. This is not cool.
Yeah, no. Well, anytime you have like one spider is okay, but like if you have like a spider infestation, like that, no. I mean, like I've been doing this for a long time. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Mm-mm.
Funny story about my wife, and she's going to kill me for telling this story. When she was in high school, maybe early college, she jumped out of her moving car in the driver's seat because there was a spider in the car. Like jumped out of it. Her friend went over and jumped in the car and stopped it literally 5 miles an hour. She's like, "I'm out.
I'm done."
Didn't even stop it. Just, I'm out.
It's not worth it.
No. We'll drive by a house that burned to the ground. She goes, "See, they had a spider."
That's right. That's right. It's the only reasonable solution. Yeah.
I'm like, well, so anyway, I'm the spider killer in my house. But that's how it goes.
It's good to know your role.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to be you're the dragon slayer, man.
There we go. I know, but like 3:00 in the morning, it's not my favorite role. Okay, hold on.
We don't always get to choose when we're heroes. That's
absolutely
in the dead of night.
So what are your solutions? I mean, like for instance, here and pest control gets beyond just bugs, but we get that neighbor sometimes with birds here. We got a lot of birds, like a lot of people do in the neighborhoods, but you get that neighbor that goes out there and decides they're going to feed all the birds and they're taking the 50-pound bag of bird feed and pouring it across their concrete patio and just leaving it out there. And now they're feeding everything from squirrels to large rodents.
Right.
What are some of the best solutions for keeping that stuff out of your life? I mean, you're not going to go out and kill every rat and rodent out there, but do you have some good advice for people to manage that?
Well, with squirrels, they're a little bit different. I mean, even though like we've always called them rats with better PR. But you can capture a squirrel. Like there are live captures for squirrels, and any animal that you capture that you don't want to dispose of. The best method is 5 miles plus and then just release. And usually if you have access to a state or national forest, it's perfectly fine to release them in there. So you can do that. Rats and mice is a different story. There are a lot of cool innovations when it comes to kill traps for rats in particular. Mm-hmm. We actually lease out some CO2 charged traps.
Oh, that's cool.
That are temporary, and they're really cool. And it's as humane as it can be. It's very similar to like a Victor snap trap. And what you do is you put like some gooey peanut butter or chocolate up inside the thing. and there's a trigger that they hit with their nose. And when they hit that trigger, it breaks their neck.
Wow.
And so it's a multi-kill. And so you mount it to like the side of, inside a warehouse or outside your house or something like that. And, only a rat or a mouse could stick its head up in there. But your cat couldn't stick its head up in there, or your dog or anything like that. So it's relatively safe in that regard. Now your kid could stick its finger up in there. Well, but
then do that once.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and like it's cool to test it. I mean, you can do it with like a number 2 pencil. You stick that, and then you'll see how it breaks the number 2 pencil, and it actually has it has a scorekeeper on the outside.
That's
so
amazing.
You'll know how many times it goes off, because
you got to clean it out at some point.
Well, it just drops the body underneath, and
okay, so it shows it. It's like
yeah.
I'll show you the next one now. Yeah.
Well, there's a digital counter, but rats don't. I mean, they're intelligent, but they're not intelligent to go like, "Hey, there's a dead rat here. Maybe I shouldn't hang out here."
Yeah.
They'll just stack dead rats on top of one another. But what can happen is like a raccoon will come along and carry them off, or like a bird of prey or something like that.
Yep.
And for people that are concerned about transference of poisons from
solution.
From like when you kill a rat and like another animal eats it. Even though we don't have a whole lot of evidence that ever happens where it poisons. I mean, it's going to get some of it, but the LD50 on it is so much higher for those bigger animals than it is for the rat that it's really not going to bother any of them. Most of those poisons are blood thinners.
Yeah.
Anticoagulant is what they call it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, but this is an effective way that you can do that without poisons.
And I think it's much more humane than the glue traps and everything else that you see out there.
I hate glue traps, man. I hate them.
Those bug me.
Now, I will say I hate to say it, but it's about the only effective way to catch flying squirrels.
Well, sure.
And that sucks, but
yeah.
We
don't have to worry about those here.
Oh, really? You guys don't have those?
We have squirrels. We got squirrels everywhere.
No flying squirrels?
We got more squirrels than cars. Well, but I've got fir trees that are, 200 feet high in the yard here. So, I mean, I've got probably 4 to 6 that rummage through the half-acre property I have. So they're pretty popular around here.
But they don't, I mean, do you guys have a lot of where they get in people's houses like they do down here?
Not as bad, just because there's so many places for them to be. All the trees and all the stuff, they pretty much would rather hang out there than in somebody's house, just because, they kind of want their own space. So it happens, but it's pretty rare. Yeah.
Well, and you guys don't have like a lot of oak trees and stuff like that there either.
Now, this is all like hemlock and fir and,
so pretty tall and straight, right?
Tall, straight. Yep.
Yeah. See, that's the issue here. It's like we have pine trees, but then we also have like those low live oaks.
Yep.
And what happens is people again, this is property maintenance, but like you want to keep the branches trimmed back from the roof.
Sure.
That's how ants, carpenter ants in particular, are going to get in your house. That's how squirrels and rats are going to get onto your roof. And like we have roof rats, and that's primarily where they want to go up high. And so keeping branches trimmed back, one, it's going to keep it from potentially getting damaged by the tree, but also it's reducing the amount of highway access that any critters have to your house. Because they'll go, if you let them grow, they'll eventually get up tall enough where, they're going to provide the shade that you want. It's just not going to be immediate. So you just got to keep those branches trimmed back.
Yeah, it's smart. And it's also good just, for here, we tend to do it just because, we get fires and things like that. So you're really trying to keep that stuff back from the houses and give yourself a little bit of break there. But, anything up against the house, bushes, trees, any of that stuff, you're just, you've got the freeway exit right into your house for all those pests.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and like there's lots of things that you can do around your house that are non-pesticide related to help prevent pests. Like if you're talking termites, like the good rule of thumb is 6 inches of exposure on your slab, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because what they're going to do is they're going to tube. And so as long as you can see the foundation, you're going to be able to, once a month do a visual inspection on the foundation. It's like, okay, there's no tubes. It's not the only access. I mean, they can come up through like a bath trap, and, if there's a crack in the foundation, I've,
Sure.
I found them in an island in a kitchen before. So, I mean, like, it can happen, but it's very rare. And so what I encourage a lot of people to do is to put in a rock barrier, give yourself go down about 10 inches.
Yep.
Put in, a weed guard and then come back through with rock and give yourself about a foot edge. Because what happens is so many people, they don't, when they go through and mulch, their flower beds, they don't pull out the old mulch. And so it just gets
they just keep stacking
higher.
it. Keeps,
And so if you do that up against your foundation, eventually you're going to lose sight of the foundation really quickly. Yeah. And then who knows what's going on in there. And like, it's not just termites. I mean, ants and everything else that lives underneath that mulch, which is cockroaches and earwigs and silverfish. And just going down the road. Yeah. They all have access. If you have a brick home, really good access because you have weep holes and you're probably covering up the
super highway there too. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're probably covering up the weep hole, which means you're probably creating a moisture issue inside the house. So, I mean, it just things cascade without, thoughtfulness on how you're going to maintain the yard.
Man, Craig, before we go, what else did we not talk about with pest control? I mean, we could do hours of this and we probably will, but
the only thing we didn't mention, which is something I talk about all the time especially with termites, is Centricon. It's the product I use 95% of the time when it's dealing with this kind of stuff. And don't listen to me, go do your own research on it, but there are incredible studies coming out of University of Florida right now talking about how what's great about it is there's no pesticide in the soil. Cool. The termites have to come to the station in order for it to be effective. But the reach of that bait is almost 3 times what liquid chemical in the ground is.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And so if you live in a neighborhood where your houses are kind of tight, if you put a system like that in, you're not only helping yourself, but you're helping your neighbors out. And so like when I was talking about, on average, you've got about 20 colonies in your yard. Well, I mean, like that's a barrier around your home that all those colonies are now feeding on that you can potentially eliminate. And again,
so that's why you want to become friends with your neighbors and get everybody under the same plan with those. Exactly. And that way you've got an island there of protection.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, again, termites are extremely beneficial. I mean, like this is how we break down cellulose in the wild. Yeah. And so we want to keep the termites. We just want to keep them off the house. Yeah. So yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, how do people track you down if they're listening in your area and they're like, man, I got to get this guy to have his people out to my place. What's the best way for people to track you down?
Yeah, I mean, you can reach me on Facebook, pretty much on any of my pages. I mean, you can find me under my name, Craig Williams. You can find me Homeowners Show. You can find me Excalibur Pest, Termisave, any of those. I'll respond to any of them. If you need to email me, it's just craig@excaliburpest.com. And I'm on pretty much all the socials, but really more active on Facebook because there's a lot of pest control happening on Facebook.
You got it. Well, hey, let's talk about Homeowners Show here real quick before we go, because that's another topic here that I love heading over and jumping on your show from time to time. That's been a lot of fun in the past.
Yeah, no, and it is a labor of love. That is for sure. So we've been at it for 4 years now.
Has it been 4 years? Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we figured that out the other day because how old Kevin's laptop was.
There you go. That'll do it.
When did you get that? Oh yeah. About 4 years ago.
4 years ago.
But yeah, so we have an episode come out every Tuesday. We're kind of a long form podcast. We love doing interviews, but we do product reviews from time to time. And we also just talk about life in general. So, we'll usually go about an hour and a half. But we've started doing a lot of live events. We've got another live event coming up on the 19th. We're going to go talk to a bunch of contractors and HVAC and flooring guys, and interview a bunch of them. So, it's been fun, man. Like we started, I took the idea to Kevin and said, hey, would you do this with me? The whole concept behind it was, I was pretty good at marketing in my area. Sure. And I noticed that there was a lot of guys that I was networking with, that are kind of in my orbit of pest control, whether that be like HVAC, flooring, plumbing, electrical, whatever it is. I think there were so many talented guys and their marketing sucked. And it was like, if people just knew who you were, more people would use you, but you don't have the tools in order to get your name out there. And I was like, how could I help them with this? And so that was really the initial pull, was to like, I want to bring my friends in. I want to interview them so that people know how awesome they are.
See?
And that was really it. And from there,
4 years later, here you go.
Yeah. And so now we're in all 50 states. We're in 12 different countries. It's been fun. And my wife lovingly refers to it as my hobby. Which it is.
Hey,
I mean,
there's a lot of work in this. And if she can call it a hobby, then take that as a compliment and smile, because you're not getting in trouble for it.
It bothered me at first, but then she was like, look, there are a lot worse things you could be doing.
Fair point.
Yeah. And I was like,
fair
cool,
point.
I'll run, as long as you're happy with it, I'm fine.
Yeah. I mean, and here's the thing. And as people know out there that have ever done podcasts, it's a labor of love. You have to put years into it for it to become, net zero as far as financially for you. So
yeah,
there's a lot of work to do this just to get to square one.
Yeah. And we've always appreciated your support, man. You've been a huge encouragement to us. Cause I mean, you're the godfather of this space.
I don't know about that, but thanks.
But yeah, man, it's cool to get to be friends with people who are, I think that's one of the coolest things about podcasting, man, is like I've rarely met a competitor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, like
I 100% agree.
And there's so many people that you meet that like want to do what you're doing. You're like, man, I wish I could do that. And you're like, you totally could. And like everyone that I've ever met in podcasting has been encouraging like that. It's like, well, you can do this. You could do that. You could totally have a show. I'm like, what would I talk about? I was like, what are we talking about right now?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. No, I mean, it's such a cool community. And I just have to say, I agree. It's so fun because it's an interesting group in that this is a very interesting way to create a living as well. I do this for a living, but it's very lonely as well, because you don't see the people you're talking to unless you're doing live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You record it, you send it off into the ether, and you see numbers. Yeah. And then you get social media feedback, but that's really all you get.
That's it. Yeah. And it's like, what does that mean? I mean, it could be like it was a complete train wreck, and so everybody's slowing down to watch the aftermath.
Yeah, could be.
Or it could be like, hey, that was really good. I had something going there.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. You have unless somebody leaves a comment or a review, like you have zero clue as to how you did. Yeah. And it's like without a feedback machine. I mean, like this is I think this is why comics are so much quicker on their feet, right? Because in order to practice the craft, you have to be in front of people, and
you got to get stuff thrown at you first.
Yeah, and like we have to be in front of no one, so like we can just suck for years, and and no one would say anything.
Yeah,
well,
yeah. Usually, though, what happens is those people get burned out because they start watching the numbers. They watch the numbers and they're like, okay, we're losing people instead of gaining. And then about show 8, they're gone.
Yeah. Yeah. That is the average, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like this is why, and I think you've probably looked at this too. I mean, you and I are in like the top 1% of all podcasts.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with like our numbers as much as it is. We've just put out consistent content for years.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, we're, around the house here, and I know you guys out there listening to this too, around the house, we're at 1464 as far as 1,464 episodes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like we got excited the other day because we were like fixing to bounce 230.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? This is a radio show that's been going on for 34, coming on 35 years this year. So
yeah,
it's when podcasting started, we were on it.
Well, yeah, the pump was primed.
Yeah, it was ready to go.
What's one more place to send our content?
We're already recording it. Let's just throw it up on the web, see what happens. And we were throwing it up on SoundCloud because that's all you could do back then.
That's right.
That's what we did. Craig Williams, thanks for coming on today, brother. How do people find the Homeowners Show?
Homeownershow.com, but you can find it on any podcast platform. We actually just we just started using YouTube the other day.
Nice.
And so we've got our first 1,000 subscribers on there. So
Nice
I mean, like
work.
if you want to watch us, we're not much to look at, but people like video.
They
So-
do. No question.
So we're doing it.
Awesome, man. Congrats and best of luck with that. We'll have you back on again next time.
Appreciate it, bud.
All
Anytime.
right. I'm Eric G, and you've been listening to Around the House.
Somewhere unseen and undiscovered, anywhere beyond the mean. Life is a love song, let's be lovers. We're all over the radio. Take my hand, I know where to go. All over the radio with you.
Hey, it's Eric G from Around the House. Are you planning a decking or siding project this year? If you are, you've got to check out my friends at Millboard. Millboard is a completely different kind of composite decking and cladding that enhances outdoor spaces with enduring distinction. Hand molded from the finest oak, it realistically mimics the natural grain and color of premium hardwood. If you're looking for something that doesn't look like plastic and instead real wood, check out millboard.com. Make sure and check out that interview we did just a few weeks back. That's millboard.com.